Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael Roser, and I'd like to welcome everyone back to another fantastic show we have lined up for you. Tonight, folks, I have one incredible individual in the studio with me this evening. Her name is Chickie Haute, and I'll be honest, there are probably a good handful of you who have heard of this individual and the wonderful work that she's done in the way of clairvoyance, premonition, and in the paranormal world. But folks, tonight we're going to traverse those bridges and cross those paths and see where they lead and even talk about how they may intersect. This is going to be great, guys. I have been looking forward to having Chickie on the show since I met her. It was a very happen chance sort of meeting, but sometimes we call it synchronicity, if you will. And truth of the matter is, we oh my God, there we go. Sorry. Technical difficulties. As I was saying, we had sort of an interesting meeting. She reached out to me on the internet, and I started talking to her as I would anybody who reaches out. And then I realized this was somebody who had some gravity behind them in the way of experience, in the way of research, and intellectually. Now, the proper moniker that you would call this woman is Reverend Chickie Haute. Now, that is very important in respect to the person and the position and the people that she reaches. And we'll talk a little bit about that, because I think that when somebody hears the word like Reverend or something that's perhaps in respect to organized religion, there's a little bit of off-put, but it has nothing to do with the person that they're looking at. It has to do with their own upbringing and their own sense of what things are. So in that respect, I think it's nice to be clear about what we're really doing here, the intentions that are behind all of the energy that we present, whether it's in our personal lives or our professional lives. And I think that something in the way of a prefix like Reverend has a lot of significance behind it. And again, I'd like to explore that. But that is really on the fringe of where we're going tonight, folks. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Chickie on in just a moment. But before I do, I'm going to read a little bio, as I often do, that gets you a little bit up to speed with who this person is and really take in the scope of what she's accomplished. Reverend Chickie Haute has been the owner of the North American Psychic and Paranormal Network since July 27th, 2009. She is a respected professional, psychic intuitive, and well-being coach with 29 years of continued education and business experience. Chickie Haute and her psychic team at the North American Psychic and Paranormal Network are best known for their ability to predict natural disasters. The largest domestic natural disaster predicted. Check this out. Virginia earthquake on August 23, 2011 that shook from the Carolinas to Canada on the east coast of the United States. Following the quake, Hurricane Irene made landfall and caused $16.5 billion in flooding damage. With the help of Chickie Haute and her psychic team, officials were prepared for the quake in Washington, D.C., and coastal evacuations were made. The implications here are incredible, guys. This is so cool. Chickie Haute's most famous international prediction was the Russian Chelyabinsk. Maybe you can help me with that when you come on. Sorry. Chelyabinsk. Meteor impact on February 15th, 2013. The meteor is the largest natural object to have entered the Earth's atmosphere undetected since 1908. Chickie Haute has established herself as the rock psychic, catering internationally to successful professionals in the entertainment industry. When Chickie is not busy with her psychic and coaching practice, she works with autistic adults and children as an advocate in the mental health industry. She is a key player on interdisciplinary teams. In Chickie's free time, she can be found participating in leading charitable and community events. Chickie has recently been interviewed on such news networks such as CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, and Telemundo for her community and activist presence. Chickie Haute and the North American Psychic and Paranormal Network team are currently working with their international authorities and real-life superheroes. Now, you guys can go and check out that bio at length. In the description included are her contacts and more of her credentials, as well as the network that she's promoting. And I implore you guys to go and check it out, because she has certainly built one hell of a following, and for good reason, in regards to what she does. But without further ado, I'd like to bring on Reverend Chickie Haute.
Well,
hey, how
hello.
are you there?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay. Tongue keeps tripping up there, but as time goes on, we'll stretch and loosen that up a bit. But listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I think it's really kind of cool how we met. I think sometimes energies sort of recognize each other before the conscious mind knows what's going on, whether it's in the way of, hey, we're on this planet doing something similar, or there's a deeper connection, you know, in different ways. It's just cool how energy works. So thank you for being with us here tonight.
Certainly my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let me start you here. Let's go to square one, because you're a very interesting person and you have a lot to share. And, you know, your work has encompassed many different branches of the field. At what point in your life did you feel that you had a connection to something else that other people perhaps around you weren't really connecting with? May it be a spirit, or you were having premonitions or intuition? And in that respect, was it more towards your childhood that you had an interest here, or was it something that happened later in life that set you on your path? Where did you begin?
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is kind of bizarro. However, I remember being in the crib, and I was definitely in around 16 weeks of age. And everything first started, and a lot of confusion started when my brain started, you know, the gray matter really started to come together around 16 to 20 weeks. So 16 weeks, I get bored and I decide, you know, I need to go out. So I climb over the railing of the crib and I'm hanging. Okay. And I'm going, oh my God, my legs are too short. I can't keep on holding that. So then I'm thinking, and now I'm engineering this, and I'm thinking maybe I'll slide down these things, right? But my hands don't have dexterity. I'm strong, you know, but I'm not that strong. I landed on the floor, and something like that is so memorable because I screamed. I'm like, oh my God, I broke my leg. Oh my God, I broke my leg. And I'm having this thought process like an infant does not have. But as I realized in days after that, like I had this awareness about me. And like, I realized, wait a minute, there is cognitive awareness about me that, wait a minute, I'm looking at my hands and I'm like, wait a second, I'm looking at the mirror. I'm like, wait a minute. And then I started realizing I can out of body. There were things that I could be able to do, like telepathically call people or control my environment, or be able to summon things or know what was going to happen next. And then I noticed as I started getting older, I would be like, wait a minute, I just forgot how to do that. So I kept on saying to myself over and over again as an infant still in the crib, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, like all of these abilities. And I constantly had to coach myself because I realized, wait a minute, there's stuff from the webbing, so to speak, of where I came from previously, like a past life or what have you, that I had learned and I needed to retain. Because I know that I wasn't done doing what I needed to be able to do in this world, if that makes some sense. Because yeah.
Well, I mean, that's interesting that, you know, we often talk about reincarnation. I actually have a question for you on that we'll get to. But, you know, the idea that, you know, whatever you've learned in another existence that you may bring over into the current existence for specific purpose, whether you were still working on it or, you know, what have you, you know, a lot of times people look at this and they say, well, this is quite interesting, considering that the idea is that everything exists at once in the same space at the very same time, separated possibly by frequency, wherein, you know, we get this linear perception in some weird way. So that's really cool that that's where it started for you. Now, you mentioned that, you know, you were able to telepathically call people at one point. I want to ask you, did anybody realize that that's what you were doing? Or maybe they were in the kitchen, they thought, you know, they maybe heard your voice, or, you know, they had the thought about you and it was something natural for them, but you knew that you had actually called them. There was a result there.
I don't think they had that awareness about me. It was very subtle throughout my entire childhood. It's almost like thought implanting, if you will. And I was always able to I guess, be able to do that without people being able to say, well, what was that or why? Because people don't have or didn't I'm dating myself here, back in the 70s, people didn't think. They were too busy being hipsters, but but it's funny you mentioned about separated by frequency. I'm an energy reader. I'm an energy worker, if you will. So I understand the world as frequency, and everything has a frequency. And that's how I relate to the world.
Same here. And I'm glad that I wrote these questions that I have for you now that you said that, because I think this is going to get deep tonight, folks. This is going to be awesome. I want to mention too, and before I do that, Lori Oliphant with a $5 super sticker. Thank you so much, love. I appreciate you being here. Welcome to the show. And thank you for being one of our supporters from the very beginning. Thank you for that $5 super sticker, Lori Oliphant. What you were doing was this reinforcing that you already knew at that young age that was something you needed to do in order to retain that memory. We've heard many different stories wherein a child is born around a certain young age. They start talking about what seems like a previous existence, whether they were a firefighter, some sort of World War II pilot. I mean, we've heard these stories, but within several years, the memory is gone. But you actively had the foresight to, influence that and keep this in your memory. That's really unique. And I'll be honest, I've never heard of anybody who's had that sort of, foresight in respect to these gifts.
Thank you. It's something that I knew I had to be able to do, and I had to constantly remind myself. And it was interesting because as I entered, they say the subconscious mind and the fabric of the subconscious mind forms in this world around age 2. And it's true because I started to be able to get older and my brain started recording new information. Oh, it got hard to hold on to that information. It was like I had to practice it and exercise it and practice and exercise it. And if I didn't do it every single day and remind myself, I had a stack of things I had to be able to practice and do every single day. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. And I knew that as a very small child. So even as I was like 7, 8, 9 years old, something like maybe around 9, I would say, I had a spirit experience. And it freaked me out because I forgot the information had been rewritten.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And it's very reflective of, the condition of the human mind. And then, we've talked on this show and many others about certain programming that people have already isolated, whether you talk about MK Ultra, whether you talk about the Montauk Project, Pegasus, you name it. There are all sorts of experimentations that have occurred in the way of that sort of manipulation. But there's a malleability there within the mind. And it is something that we do have control over. But if you don't understand the limitations of where that goes, I would say it's harder to gain control over that environment. Let me ask you, because something that's really fascinating with you about this is that, you have these premonitions and you don't just have them wherein you're sitting at a diner and you tell a friend that they might get married next year. You're talking on a large scale. So let me put it this way. One question I often hear in regards to psychic validity is that if there is a legitimate clairvoyance as a phenomenon, they say, why is it that we're not seeing more global events before they happen? Why can't we avert this disaster? To which I often reply, and of course, this is my opinion, perhaps we're not always able to see a collective event coming because the people involved may have made an agreement to experience that to some certain, way, even if it is calamity. Why do you think more people aren't privy to premonition on a larger scale? And do you think that there may be an element of interference in respect to the soul's chosen path by revealing certain premonitions?
Well, okay. A lot of psychics and a lot of people are not going to like this answer, but I'm a straight shooter and I can't decode anything. A lot of professional psychics and a lot of unprofessional psychics alike do not have the intention and the focus needed to be able to zero in on a particular event. And a lot of them are distracted because they're very busy being able to work on a smaller level. Has my boyfriend going to decide to come back? It's that level of minuscule things that they're wasting their time on when because it pays the bills, it keeps the lights on, it keeps the internet connected. But I would implore the people that are listening to this show right now, and also the professional psychics that are out there, please take 10-15 minutes a week and be able to do something for your planet, do something for the world, be able to be a superhero, use your ability to be able to help, for the greater good, because there are these events that are happening that everybody's so busy, running to Starbucks to get their latte, you forget what's really important is saving lives. And if we can just be able to save one life, just one, you've done a good job.
I would absolutely rest easy in knowing that. But my question still lingers here. And this is actually stemming from something I kind of learned in respect to philosophy when it came to Carlos Castaneda. And I'll give you a quick story from that. So what happened was, Carlos Castaneda was with his mentor, Don Juan, and they're out in the wilderness and they're going hunting. Carlos Castaneda, for those who don't know, he was the apprentice of a man of knowledge, at least allegedly within the story. Okay, so they go out and they hunt, and Carlos is instructed to create a trap for a rabbit so that they can catch it to eat. So he does this, and he's very hesitant about killing anything that comes into the trap. And Don Juan says to him, listen, if it's there, it's meant to be there. That's the end of that one's natural life. It gives a gift to you. So oh God, I want to tie this in a very collective sense. So give me a moment here. He does catch the rabbit. And as he's sitting there debating how he's going to kill it, because he's still not comfortable with it, the rabbit freaks out so much that it snaps its own back, and he didn't actually have to go through with it. To which Don Juan explains, that's exactly what I'm saying. It has to go either way. That's the path that it has chosen. So in respect to the premonitions, wherein we're affecting many, many, many people, averting a disaster, which to us seems a very positive thing. And I might be playing the devil's advocate here a little bit when I'm asking you these questions. But that being said, it's something that people have asked me in the way of getting into somebody else's path, wherein they asked to experience that car accident, or they asked to experience that divorce after marrying somebody, because, within the darkness, we grow a lot, What are your thoughts on something like that? Again, in the way of interference. I mean, I believe what you're doing is a positive thing, but I'm trying to fit it all within the paradigm.
Okay. So there's an idea within spirituality that we're supposed to release all this control, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also do no harm in the process. And I think that if harm is to come from, like, say, a natural disaster, hypothetically, right? That, is it fate, or can we affect it? I think that no matter what, if you're gonna get into that automobile accident, and you're destined to be able to, or you're manifesting that, if you will, into your reality because of cause and effect of a collective of things that have happened, right? It doesn't make a difference if this one or that one tells you you're going to get into an automobile accident, or there's going to be an earthquake and your building's going to collapse. You need to get out of Dodge. If that person is adamant and says, no, this is my reality and my fate, and you're not telling me how to live my life, then that's theirs. That's where you have to stop. But there may be other people that will be affected in that car accident. And then there's a ripple effect, if you will, of, like, not just fate, but I hate to use the word karma, but it's still, I want to say, like, a ripple effect, because now that person that's getting to that automobile accident is going to affect several other cars on the road, or potentially with children, potentially with, family people, whatever it may be. But that ripple effect, because of one person's accountability, right? It just takes one person in that chain to be able to change the outcome, if you will, and be able to have an outcome, like an effect, if you will, that it's going to be able to impact multiple families or multiple individuals. If that makes some sense. But I don't believe in fate. I don't. I think that we're all masters of our own fate. So.
Well, I mentioned I was playing the devil's advocate a little bit, and I think I need to do that for people who ask me these questions, and I seek the clarification from other people. And you did a fantastic job, in my opinion, explaining that. In my view, we can rewrite the contracts. If you're aware on that side, and then you now have awareness while you're here, the consciousness lends to that ability at this time, but we can be aware of those certain contracts. You have the absolute free will to change them. So in the way of premonition at large, You are giving people the choice. If people in New York don't want, or Washington, D.C., they didn't want to evacuate, I mean, they hid somewhere. Well, that was their choice. And they continued on that path. The soul really wanted that experience. And that's what it was. But again, I think we're very flexible in the way of our paths, and we can change them. I'm sure there are many people we've come up to in life where we did have one intention. And because of who we are in personality or experience, we decided to go a different direction. It yielded a different timeline, and that's fine. But, in the way of premonition, let me ask you this here. Is there any observable differences between premonitions garnered in a waking state versus those perhaps gathered in a dream state?
Okay. I haven't really had too much experience with regards to dream state. I can share with you. We were just speaking about this on the North American Psychic and Paranormal Network. There was back in the 1990s. I want to say it had to have been like 1996 or something like that. A flight went down. It was like flight 800 or something like that over the coast of Long Island. As a matter of fact, it crashed on Fire Island. And apparently when I was sleeping, I was living in Queens, New York. So when I was sleeping, I had my windows open and everything like that. But during the overnight, I had gone to sleep very, very early that evening, prior to even, I guess, 7 o'clock or something. I crashed. I needed a full 12 hours of sleep that night. So I remember being able to wake up in the morning, and this like stench of like gas or fuel or something was coming into my windows, because I lived right on the Atlantic. Like literally I could walk out the front door of my apartment and right there's the boardwalk. So interestingly enough, when I woke up in the morning, I recollected to my dream. And my dream was as I was saving people from wreckage of a plane crash. And then I turned on New York One News, and sure enough, they were discussing how the plane had gone down the night before. And there I was, crossing souls over in my sleep. And of course, I got into the morning and I was like, oh my God. So I think, in that one event, if you will, that I experienced, that maybe I was out of body, but that it could be a possibility, because they say time doesn't really exist. It's all kind of like, it's all happening simultaneously. Maybe it's happening in a different frame of like consciousness, if you will, or we're perceiving it, because we all perceive differently. So maybe we're perceiving time or an event, if you will, that's happening in time, whether it's happening in our sleep or it's happening in our awakened state. I would say that, for me, I think I was out of body. I may have been astraling. I know that I've done things. I've traveled through time, and, I've dragged people on dreamscapes or whatever, but with the difference, I get mini flash visions, and it isn't until I jump back into that flash vision that I could be able to watch an entire movie play out, but it doesn't last very long. I can't sit there and be able to watch it for like a full 10 minutes. I can't do that. I only get like a minute blip and maybe some flashes of news headlines or whatever it may be. Whereas when I was sleeping, it was like I was there. So very different, very different.
Oh, in your opinion, why do you think we undertake so much unconscious work within the dream time, wherein we're not actually dreaming the way that we're familiar with, but actually traveling and being involved in certain endeavors out of time and space and in certain ways? I mean, this is something that people talk about all the time. They wake up exhausted. They don't feel like they've gotten an ounce of sleep, and yet they've got a full day ahead of them. What are your thoughts on the whole purpose of that, and perhaps what we might be doing on that higher spiritual level?
I think that some of these people may have an addiction to progress in their lives. And that, I think a lot of us are like that. An addiction to progress is huge. And I think that, not everybody's going to be able to mesh with you if you feel like you're an outsider all the time. You're like, where do I fit in? But if you're addicted to progress and self-progress, especially, then, you may. But I think that also it's important that folks with intention, if you're going to go to sleep, you say, I'm going to sleep. But it requires self-discipline. It requires self-discipline. And you need to discipline your mind as well, not only through meditation and mindfulness, but being able to bridge your consciousness to your subconsciousness and discipline your consciousness so that you're not constantly in the state of like trying to fix the world, if you will, or codependency, where you're addicted to the drama and you're looking for the drama. You're the superhero out on patrol. That's something that you can't do. You need to get your sleep because you're of no good. I see people passing away 40, 50 years old. No bueno, that's not good. So me personally, I do a lot of that, where I'm traveling and I'm interacting and I'm doing all these things at the same time, but I also sleep 10 hours a night. So that's a whole other ballpark.
But that, I'm sure, really aids you in what you do, because I find that some people who are working in this field consciously, especially doing readings or healing work, it does take a lot out of you. By the end of the day, you felt like you drank a 6-pack and you just did your work for the day. That's how tired your body gets and how drained you can feel sometimes, but you feel good. And now you go to sleep. And, you often travel. Honestly, in my experiences, that's what I actually had to do. I had to affirm to myself that tonight I'm going to sleep. Tonight I will not travel. I'll say about 60% of the time it worked. The other 40%, I was still out there somewhere. But that's a really interesting thought. And again, I think it's something that everybody does. People are out there saying, well, I don't dream. But, science has even indicated that everybody does dream. You just may not remember it. So, what in that respect, let's just throw this out there for fun. What's the difference between, at least in your observation, what's the difference between a dream and something that is much more tangible in the way of actually being somewhere through traveling or, some sort of dimensional traversing through that state? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question. Okay, so I'm going to say that when we're dreaming, we're processing. It's our inner child, everything that you've absorbed between ages 2 and 9. Your raw subconsciousness, if you will, is being able to go back across your entire day. Sometimes we can watch a TV show, we have a conversation with somebody or something, and then next thing you know, you dream about it. But it's something that's already familiar to you, if you will. However, I could be able to talk about traveling. I remember when I was like 17 years old, I had a group of friends of mine and myself that would do these dreamscapes, if you will, and we would all get together and we would meet up in the astral plane, if you will. And then we would go and we would get together and we'd go places. And sometimes that just for sport and just for fun, we're a bunch of very gifted individuals, but we'd go and hijack somebody. And then in the morning, we'd be like, so what'd you think about? What were you dreaming about there? We took this one guy to the top of Mount Everest. The guy woke up in the dead of summer, no air conditioner in the house. He was freezing. He was practically blue. He was like, what the hell did you do to me? I hate you. But we told him, we left you at the top of Mount Everest. Good luck with that, buddy. It's a true story, too. People that are listening to this are going to be like, I remember that Chicky. Yeah, blonde starfish. All right, yeah.
That's hilarious. We've heard people say that, there's certainly ways to come into other people's dreams, and the way you're describing it, what you did was obviously in jest and, had some fun behind it. That's important to keep in mind too. Everything that we talk about is so goddamn serious. And at the same time, there is this element of play because we are exploring ourselves, in the way that a kid's growing up, he's exploring what he can do athletically. He's exploring what he's able to do in physical terms. We're doing it on a spiritual level or an etheric level, if you will. And again, it's sort of the same learning, but it's a much different timeline. If we are experiencing a specific reality or set of frequencies in a longitudinal sense, in respect to a relatively linear dimensional experience, what is the mechanism that anchors our consciousness or awareness in a particular reality at a particular point in time? I will rephrase that if you want me to. I know it's a little convoluted.
No, it's okay. I got you. It's
Okay.
perception.
Right.
It's perception. So it's interesting. We've done a lot of experiments with this as a group on the North American Psychic and Paranormal Network. Now, it's an understanding that we currently reside. There's all these people that are like, oh yeah, we're 5D, blah, blah, blah. No. Okay. So D is dimension, right?
Mhm.
We're living in the 4th dimension. Okay. So, it's understood that through quantum understanding or what have you, that, there's this multitude of I guess Earths or dimensions, if you will, and you got Earth 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? 5, 6, 7, 8. Anything beyond that, you're dealing with like things you cannot conceive or perceive or understand. That it's
Different
so
scale.
far different. it's a whole other realm. Like humans don't even look right like normal humans. It's weird. It's like a lot of crazy stuff. But anyway, so we had a number of different psychics be able to jump out to the 5th dimension. We have some psychics that'll jump out to the 2nd dimension. I go, live there. I want you to live there for 10 minutes. And then we'd converse, right? And we just go about, I say, stay there, but we're still witnessing the 4th dimension. What ends up happening is that their perception gets lost. And you can say, all right, well, we're talking about this, we're doing this. And the person over here will be like, I have no idea what you guys were talking about. I was out of phase.
Oh, right. That's the that's the terminology right there. Out of phase. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it happens to a lot of us, even when we're using transcendental types of meditation. You can go completely out of phase. You'll move into another frequency of consciousness, and you could be walking through a shopping mall and nobody would see you.
Right. It's absolutely.
Your frequency, your vibrational frequency that your consciousness is projecting your physical body in. This is out of phase.
I used to explain it like this. Yours is a bit more elegant than mine was. I'd say, hey, if you wanted to put your hand through this wall in front of you, all you'd have to do in a mathematic sense is raise the vibration, creating a field around your arm, X plus 1. So it's one level above this particular set of frequencies that defines the physical world. If you get there, you can literally just put your hand through the wall. We could talk about the Philadelphia experiment in that respect, because I think that's probably where modern day people understand that concept. It's not necessarily something more ancient. In the way of past lives and so forth. You say it's perception, where we're kind of placing our thought or what have you. That's what we're experiencing. So if I am, let's just say 200 people in the past, I'm 200 people in the future. We're all living at the same time. And in certain ways, maybe through deja vu, we're kind of communicating or connected or affected in certain ways. What he does or what she does or what I do, we all affect each other in the very now moment. What part of the individual prior to incarnation comes down and says, okay, I have this marble of light that reflects and signifies my awareness as the personality of Michael Roser, and I'm going to put it on this timeline here. Where the symbol kind of stay within the linear sense, or doesn't it? Maybe it just traverses.
Yeah, I think it's traversing. Yeah, I think it's traversing. And just for a second, your audio had kind of like broken up for a second, so I didn't grab like a small part of that, but I'm going to say that it's traversing, because as our frequency or our vibration changes within our personal growth, whether it happened on a psychological level or on a spiritual level, we're changing frequency. Just as though, I think it was like Dr. Emoto or something like that had done some experiments with water, and the water molecules had changed as the frequency of the emotion that was being broadcasted or focused at it. And then they froze it, and it ended up becoming, I guess, different shapes, if you will, of crystal water, if you will. So I think that we're very much like that crystal water, because our body, I don't know what percentage of water, but it's a high percentage. And, we are affected, and the frequency that we are affected, like when somebody goes and yells at you, or somebody comes into your life, and is affecting you or talking to you about something, that's what you're drawing into your reality, your existence. So perhaps in different timelines, if you will, your soul, if you will, that has always existed as the first spark of life and then scattered, and everybody ends up in this mesh or this weave, if you will, as this itsy bitsy little teeny little speck. It moves, it transverses, if you will, through time and space, and it can show up at any time, anywhere, but it would attach itself to a frequency, if you will, of existence, of understanding exactly that it relates to. It's understandable. That's why when we go beyond those 4 in any direction dimensions, why it looks like it's, a foreign language to us, or a foreign existence, or, Keikosa, like, what is this? I don't understand.
Whenever I've thought about this, I've visualized it as possibly one of those large dulcimers, or if you open up a piano and you see all the strings laid across, you just kind of tied something together for me in the way of that frequency. If you decide to vibrate at the frequency of E, and this is one existence, okay, one whole reality, that's what you're going to do. You're going to vibrate at E. You get down on the string, you swell the string. This becomes your reality. I mean, it's a very, very superficial interpretation. I know there's much more to go into, but you just something clicked for me on that one. Thank you.
It's accurate.
Yeah.
It's spot on. I tell this to my clients that,
Yeah.
you know, so again, the old, you know, the old thing that comes over, you know, people say, oh, is my ex coming back? How can I get my ex back? You know, whatever. I says, all right, this is the vibration where you're living, and this is the vibration where your ex is living. And I says, if you want to be able to get back together again with your ex, you need to stop being up over here. You need to come down over here. And I don't care if you go watch sad movies and go into the vibration of grief and, you know, rack your mind and like, I can't do that. That's destructive. And it's like, well, you got to do something. So then their cat dies and then they come down over here. And next thing they know, they hear from their ex because their ex is living in the vibration of grief. But we go up and down. I'm trying to be able to remember what it's called. There's the Hawkins scale. If you guys have seen that, the Hawkins scale of all the vibrational that frequencies, if you will, that associate with all of the emotions. The emotions are your golden key, if you will, that unlock the comprehension and the understanding across all the frequencies.
If nothing else, I believe, you know, obviously energy at the very core of our beings, but we are emotion in physical form. I think that, you know, without going too far into certain things, I think if there is extraterrestrial presence, the way that we believe, or at least some of us here, this is what they might be observing too. I mean, we're apparently a very special experiment. What's happened here on Earth in the way that it's happened, in the time frame that it's happened, I understand is something very unique to our universe. And that is one of the reasons that even some of the species that were not involved in perhaps the birth of the human race or so forth, you know, in terms of that theory, these other beings are watching in to, you know, observe sort of like a science experiment. Before we go forward, I just want to recognize very quickly Long Island Bigfoot. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat, brother. Hey, for you guys that are not in the know, we are all headed out to Montauk on August 12th of this year. All, meaning myself, Long Island Bigfoot, Wreaking Havoc 215, who you guys know, along with Gary Hootenholler from the Long Island, New York Bigfoot Society. Sorry. It's going to be great. But thank you very much, Long Island Bigfoot. I appreciate your contribution, brother. And you're always solid, man. You're always there behind the scenes, man. I just want to recognize that publicly real quick. All right, let's see here. So in the way of past lives, you know, there are many speculative ideas as to what we might be actually experiencing. And as time has gone on in my exploration of that topic, even in my personal life, I have a solid idea that I am recalling a personality that I once lived through. And yet at the same time, I have something else in the way of sort of artifact that doesn't necessarily resonate, but it still feels very familiar. Have we lived past lives in a way where we can identify with a personality and recognize our own energetic signature definitively? Or are these recollections possibly more of a cellular nature? Or is there even really a difference in respect to that perception?
Good question. I think that, you know, we may be able to recognize it. I know that I have, like, I'll go and I'll be with somebody and I'll be like, I'll get a flash vision and be like, no, you and I know this place and I'll prove it to you. Right. And I remember being with a friend and we were all the way out in Truro, Nova Scotia. And I said, all right, well, you know, you and I, we're here now, but we're here for a reason. What are the chances ever in our lifetime we're going to be in Truro, Nova Scotia, you know? And I'm like, you know what? I don't even know this area, but you know what? We're going to go to a waterfall. And I said, all right, here we go. We're going to walk down the bricks. We're going to be able to, you know, see this thing or whatever, this park or what have you. I'd never been there in my entire life. Back then, this is like the early 2000s maybe. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I didn't have a map. I didn't have anything, you know, and I'm like, no, we're going to a waterfall. You and I used to hang out there. And when we both got there, we both recognized the place. But I navigated us to this waterfall. I didn't have no freaking clue there's a waterfall there, you know, but I knew it was there. And then, of course, when we got there, my friend was so happy. They climbed the waterfall and they were like, oh, I know this place is the best place ever, you know, it's great. So, you know, I had these kinds of experiences even out in New Mexico. was with another person, and we ended up going on. We were accompanied by a spirit, and the spirit gave us an entire tour of a canyon and all of the little secrets of the canyon. And this, like, Native American spirit was like, "Hey, come on, you got some time to kill?" I was like, "Sure. Oh yeah, let me show you where me and my girlfriend, there's a secret watering hole, in the middle of this desert canyon. Her and I would go skinny dipping in there. Come on, and we drive in the middle of nowhere, and there's this like pond, it's like, how the hell you get?
There's no logical explanation. There's no logical path to follow.
No.
A lot of times I've met people who aren't necessarily spiritual or have any sort of involvement in that way, and yet they'll be aware of one aspect of these gifts that we talk about. In respect to the premonition, I had a friend who would say, I can see things coming. I can feel them coming. I can tell you who they're going to affect, but I can never tell you what it's going to be or how to stop it. Have you ever experienced anything like that? And if you haven't, or you have, I guess either way, really, is there some sort of blockage possibly that is keeping them from fully realizing the whole scope?
Okay. So I was doing an experiment based on exactly what you are speaking of. And I had to have been, jinkies, maybe like age 11. So I was in 7th grade. And at the time I was living out in Rockaway Beach, Queens, New York. And actually I was living in Queens for that matter. And I was supposed to go with my friends. It was like a date, like all the friends got together. We piled into somebody's car, and the parents would take us out to Rockaway Beach. It was Playland back then. So I'm dating myself, forgive me. So anyway, I was supposed to go to this thing. And I kept on doing readings because I was excited about it. I'm like, yeah, my friends are finally going. For us nowadays, it's like getting your crew together to go to Six Flags. It was that exciting. Sure. So I go ahead and I did a reading on it. And I'm like, why am I not there? I was pissed. I was like, oh, no, bueno, we're not doing this. I'm going, man. And I remember I kept on doing readings, and I'm like, I don't like this. This isn't working out good for me. I don't like, why am I not there? So sure enough, the morning of the day that I was supposed to go, I went ahead and I guess I woke up with like a pinched nerve in my neck or something like that. I couldn't turn my head left. I was like,
oh my God.
You get growing pains, things happen in the body, So I ended up getting really pissed off, and I was just like, you know what? Tylenol, Advil, heating pad. I went to the amusement park with a heating pad, like a heating thingy and ice and all this kind of crap on my face. Or on my neck, if you will. And it was so funny that when I got there, the butterfly effect actually happened, because when I got into the car, okay, and I was as soon as we started driving down the road, like if you remember the movie The Butterfly Effect, right? The whole reality went brrr. So something happens when you tamper with your reality. Something does. And I can't begin to be able to tell you what that is, but I can tell you your entire dimension in how your mind or your body or your spirit shows up in this dimension. Something happens, because if something is supposed to be said a certain way, and I witnessed it, I experienced it, and I tampered with it at a very young age. So how you can be able to explain that, I don't know. But something does happen. Something does. And I want to be able to try to answer your question precisely. Telling the story. But I don't know if I did or not.
No, that's fine. While you're talking, I have to ask you, and it's something that I don't ask many people because of the implications and the left field end of it. But I think that there is a reality here. Do you have a connection to any sort of star system, or, would maybe identify with what we would know as a star seed of some sort in any respect? Do you have any connection that way that you would talk about?
Well, we've got a number of hybrid alien and also some reincarnated alien that are a part of the North American Psychic and Paranormal Network, and they come in and they engage us frequently, but they're hybrid, so that's, I'm sure we've all encountered those. However, I will be able to, I'm going to go there with a sensitive topic. Okay. Now, back last October into November, a lot of people were complaining of like really bad headaches. And that is when COVID had hit its absolute peak in a lot of the major cities. Now, also in or around that time, there was also a lot of rioting and protesting going on. And there was the use of sound cannons. So all this, what do I want to be able to call it? It's infrasound, INFRA sound. Okay. Actually, if you go ahead and use an infrasound cannon on somebody, you can melt somebody's internal organs, cause pulmonary embolisms, be able to cause all kinds of like upper respiratory distress. It mimicked a lot of the COVID. If you go and you Google it. So what ended up happening was I was like, oh Christ, they're killing people. The infrasound is killing people. This is bad. So I went and I did something a little naughty, and this is the first show that I'm admitting to being able to do this. They'll probably, either carry me away and, a white straitjacket, either that or put me in a cell somewhere. But I'm the one that reached out to the camps, the base camps, if you will, on the dark side of the moon. And I said, SOS, we have a problem. We have a problem. They're violating the first rule of creation, and they're killing humans. They're wiping us out. They don't know what to do with our population, so they're just killing us off. They're posing it, if you will, as pandemic, if you will, or what have you. But there's an underlying agenda long term. But I'm not going to get into all that because I know we're on YouTube. But the point that I'm trying to be able to make here is that I did make contact, and I put out an SOS. And is it any coincidence that here we are, several months later, and now they're talking about UFOs all over the freaking place? Because the people that I reached out for SOS are like, no, we're making ourselves known and we're going to help you people. Mark my words on that one.
That's fascinating. And I do hope that you are correct in that, because I think a lot of people would like to see some sort of disclosure. I mean, I don't think that it'll come from the governments that be. I don't think there will be any day that somebody stands on a podium, says, hey, this is what it is. We lied. Sorry, guys. It's going to come, I think, personally and through the groups of people that are exploring this, whether you're part of CE5 or some other practice that engages the spiritual side of things and the meditations wherein you're connecting and calling these beings that very well could be sitting right next to you in the space that you are. Again, when we were talking about frequencies and the differences in that sense. I mean, we can talk about anything except saying the big C word over and over. That's the only thing I can't do, but we can talk about those bases on the dark side of the moon if you're privy to do it, because I have a couple questions about that and the advent of the Galactic Federation that we're now starting to become aware of. People are talking about this. General Ashed had mentioned the Israeli army some time ago, that not only were we involved or had some connection with the federal the Galactic Federation, they also had these bases over on Mars, and this has been the case for so long. So let me ask you this: how much of our immediate universe, in your thought, is actually colonized by us already? And exactly how long, if you were to, make a shot in the dark here, do you think we've been doing this? Is it maybe just in the last century?
Well, okay. So Earth's been around for a very, 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 very long time. Are we the first species to inhabit this joint? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think our planet goes through phases, just as we're going through climate change right now. Eventually the planet's going to go through another revolution or evolution, if you will, where it won't be able to sustain. And that may be due to the fact that our species may need to move further away from the sun and go to Mars and terraform that, because our planet may be too close to the sun as it starts to become like a giant, if you will. So that's a possibility. And also, I think also that, there's been some collaboration, hence the reason why ever so recently we've now started Space Force. It was a necessity. We had to be able, because we're not always going to agree. And if we're not going to agree, we need to be able to protect and defend ourselves, because United States likes to pick fights. We're a violent species,
We are.
I know most aliens are like, talk to the hand, face don't want to hear it, but they're smart, they're just like, all right, we'll let the little child have its tantrum. Hey, want a cookie?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
exactly. But I think they're a little bit more intelligent, and they're just like, all right, whatever. We don't agree with what you're doing, but I think that are there species that are removing humans of their abductions? I think so. I definitely think so. Is it happening as a collaborative? As far as like an agreement, I think that, there may be off-worlding people, some special people, maybe very intelligent people. I think, what was the Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind? Was it not Close Encounters? Fifth Kind. That was it. The one that was based out of Nome, Alaska, or whatever. So that was a very interesting one, but they were also choosing very specific, very intentional people. Again, even like the 4400, that's another show that goes ahead and says, all right, we've got people, but we're going to give you people back. We've upgraded the idea. But I think what's happening is that you influence, you affect people, and then can they really go back and they be reintegrated into society or population? I don't think so. But I think that there is. I think that there is something going on. And I think that it may not be in collaboration or cooperation with the world governments. I hate to say that. However, in what little communication I did have, I know that they did call an emergency meeting with our world leaders to go, hey, well, what are you doing? And they got poo-pooed. They got brushed off. So they were like, we got this. Don't worry. We'll take care of you. And now everybody's in a panic, for all these months about UFO. I'm like, all right, don't worry about it. We got you, man. Just bring us tacos. We'll be all right.
Well, there are definitely two narratives, very stark narratives to this entire event that's going on right now in relation to UFOs and so forth. One is obviously based in fear. This is what we're seeing in the national medias. This is the narrative that Lou Elizondo and some of these other guys underneath them are touting. Jeremy Corbell, you name it, they're all doing the same thing. Then on the other side, you have a narrative that says, hey, we come in peace and we are of this spiritual connection. They are family. How many of these crafts, again, in your opinion, do you think are actually attributed to extraterrestrial or some off-worldly species, and how much of what we're seeing in the sky do you think might be our back-engineered technology?
Good question. I'm going to probably put it in about maybe 1% is actual alien coming to our planet, mostly because of the fact that they don't want to wage war. They don't want to piss people off. So they're going to come down, and they got missions and they got agreements, and it is what it is. So it's interesting. And I think with regards to our personal technology, I think that most of it is. I see a lot of people, when I lived out in New Mexico, right, I would go out and I see things in the sky, right? And I went out and I invested, I don't know, well over $1,000 on this giant telescope. And I went ahead and I planted that thing in my backyard, and I went ahead and I started looking at things. And 10 out of 10 times, it was either a weather balloon or a satellite, or if it was something very dim moving way deep in the sky, it was a meteor, of some sort, like some kind of rock, nothing to write home about.
That's a lot of what we see. And, I think one of the basic principles of ufology is to analyze and critically think over some of these videos and captures, because there is a lot of times a logical explanation, especially in some of the more weather prone footage that we get. I think that there's something there that we're just not familiar with. I'm just going to put this out here right now. You guys who have been watching the show for a long time know that I also am clairvoyant in many ways. And when I do these shows, I often have spirits that step in. There's one particular that I work with named Eric from, well, you guys would know him from channeling Eric, Elisa Medhus, his channel. And he's been with me for a very long time. And he's here and he's been with me. He's sitting here working. But all of a sudden, as we've been talking about this, I have these tall figures that are dressed in white, that have long blonde hair and very fine features stepping in. There's 3 of them. And it kind of took me by surprise, because it was a very stark energy, and it's very, very grounded. But I've never actually seen anything in this way when it comes into my third eye. I'm not going to say that this is, extraterrestrials or, anything like that. But I will say that this is definitely doesn't feel familiar the way that a spirit guide would, but it's not threatening in any way, shape, or form, but it feels something much further away. So I'm just going to put that out there. I don't know what it means, but that's the experience I'm having here. I want to take the last half hour here, and I think by the way, I think all of your answers here are fantastic. Your insight is more than I expected. Not selling you short in any way, but I love it when people start to open up and really get into the depth here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the paranormal. I have to continue to revisit this as my name is Dark Hour Paranormal and I can't change it. But no, I'm kidding. It is something that fascinates me and I have lots of experience in. And again, I think some of these things do connect. But in your experience and research, have you found any convincing connection between the paranormal world and the cryptid world? Is there some sort of dimensional highway or overtone of a space various beings traverse through within the folds of what we intermittently perceive?
Good question. I haven't done a lot of work with cryptids. I do intend on being able to work with cryptids, though, and research them because I live right here at Lake Ontario, and we have our own Nessie, if you will. So do I think that there's some kind of cross-dimensional or something, supernatural where they're phasing in or phasing out or whatever? No. What I do think is that everything that ever existed on this planet, including humans, we have Asians, we have, Middle Easterns, we have African American, or Black, if you will. We've got so many different people that look very different ways. You can look at someone's facial features and you can say, they look like they're from this part of the world, and I think that these are all, different species, if you will, of humanoid that have been crossbred to be able to exist on this particular planet to be able to preserve some kind of DNA. Now, the same thing be said about cryptids, that perhaps there is almost like Earth being viewed as like a sanctuary planet, if you will. And they're saying, okay, this is where we're going to go to be able to start preserving DNA strands, if you will. And we're going to go and we're going to start crossing. So why does this one particular cryptid, if you will, look like a kind of like a mangled, coyote or something like that? Or, just chupacabra looks like a cross between this animal and this animal and this animal. Well, maybe because it is. Maybe because you've gone ahead and you've taken some animals and you've, spliced DNA. We've been doing this with genetics for like decades. So, a lot of this work, if you will, is being done. I really and truly feel this is the story, that perhaps there are species that are using this planet as a sanctuary and being able to move these animals, if you will. But you can't just take a species or whatever that's evasive, if you will, and be able to introduce it, because it could wipe out another one of our species. So I think what you have to do is you have to be able to cross the genetics and breed it over a period of time, just like we do with plants, just like we do with different types of animals, to be able to create, if you will, something that's a little more recognizable as far as like maybe a subspecies, and maybe eventually a lot of these cryptids that we know that are supernatural, if you will, are someday on this planet going to be subspecies, if you will, of a particular, animal type of some sort, and they're going to say, oh, well, we just discovered this. And it's like, no, it's been genetically modified over a period of time. This is just where science is going to dump it.
No, it's a curious thought. It really is, because I think we do have some involvement in the way of what's being seen in the world of cryptids, at least initially. When you talk about perhaps the Dover demon, something that shows up for 72 hours, there's just a handful of people that, saw it run through its backyard, and that was it. We never heard of it again. Yeah. People talk about the interdimensional aspect, and, we use this very, very lightly when it comes to certain things, because the tangibility of that it's very difficult to prove. But especially when it comes to Bigfoot, which I think a lot of people know and love this character. There are some people out there who are very, very intensely involved in not only researching this particular creature in its habitat, but I've come up to people who have actually made contact with this in the way that it actually hangs out with the creature and perhaps the pack. I've seen pictures, I've seen videos. Now, one of the interesting things about the evidence that I've seen, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to share this. It was from a private source. He has his reasons, but it kills me because, personal conviction is one thing, but I'm not doing this solely for my personal conviction, but I can talk about it at least. In the picture, he would have, for example, a Bigfoot right next to him. Okay, possibly a juvenile. Maybe this one is hugging him around, the side, and he's standing there. And you can very clearly see that there is something hairy that has a face that's, small, and, you can make out the shape, and he's holding. But the subject itself is very blurry, and it might not just be blurry all over the subject. It's just certain parts that kind of like come in waves. Some parts are clear. So I asked him, I said, what are your thoughts about this? How these things are showing up on film? We're not getting this smoking gun. I can, retrace every hair in the photo like we'd like to see, but yet there's obviously something there, and you're standing there. He said, I'm not really sure. I'm more in the end of the research here, but my thought is that they actually exist consciously in two different overtones, at least, where you and I may be aware of one, the physical third dimension, everything that, what we can touch and handle. These particular beings have the mental capacity wherein they're actually shifting vibrationally. And to me, that's not a very odd concept, because I think that there have been many instances of ancient cultures who had men of knowledge, people who were very versed in the world of spirituality and shapeshift and know how to use certain perception and imagery to project that in an energetic sense. So to me, that idea is not completely out of, the picture here of what we should be looking at. What are your thoughts on some of these beings, within the research that you've done, of course, possibly having an interdimensional element to it?
Well, I think that's a strong possibility. Again, I think it falls under the whole out of phase thing.
I think you're right too.
I think we came full circle on that one. I think it's the same thing also, because sometimes you get species of people that are, and really we have this on our planet, right, where they are operating and living in such a different like phase or frequency. They can go and live on some little island somewhere and live for, literally thousands of years. And our people, our modern Caucasian people, or, modern society, if you will, can try to go there. And they're so definitely out of phase in their society that they've created, if you will, that people can't go there, and it's just like, no, you can't come here. You're not in vibration. You don't understand our culture, or you don't understand. So they're constantly not being seen. But I think it because, again, they're maybe even out of phase, or not in vibration, if you will, with how we live as modern people, because that's a vibration. Our technology changes our vibration, even as human beings. So I think that the more, even, something so simple as even deer, I think that the vibration of the planet and the vibration of how the sun hits the planet, I think also these animals will come out dark, later at night, when things are more calmed down. Again, the vibration changes, and I think they respond. It's not like they're looking up, and saying it's getting dark out, because heck, it gets dark out right before a thunderstorm, or it gets dark out during an eclipse. Are all the deer running out? No. And we're going to see that. What is today? The 9th, tomorrow's the 10th. So we're going to see an eclipse. You folks can be able to tell me if you see deer running out in the dark. Okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah. All right.
Again, you come around very grounded, with these responses. And what kind of, flipped in my mind here as you were mentioning that, just to mirror again this whole concept, and then we'll move on to the next question in regards to paranormal, is Shangri-La, which apparently exists in a specific physical place within I forget the mountain range. I'm having a point of blank, but at any rate, one time it was more physical, and it's now moved into these higher dimensions. And anybody who's seeking to find this place has to either go through some sort of meditative practice or some sort of discipline wherein they can consciously raise their vibration in order to enter it. Because if they don't, it just doesn't exist within that reality. So again, that was just to mirror, again, guys, the concepts that we're talking about here. In your opinion, let's see, hold on, let me hear. What I got here.
In your opinion, you step out, I'm going to mention something quickly. Yeah. What the bleep do we know? That movie that has been around for I guess, a decade plus, if you will, speaks exactly of, your awareness. And it isn't until your awareness is brought up to a specific level. There's one scene where a medicine man is standing next to a woman. She's looking out at the water. She doesn't see the boat. He taps her third eye, and then suddenly now she sees the boat. So yeah.
Yep. Yep. Same thing in Native American cultures, depending on the tribe. What the man of knowledge would do was to identify a small point on the back in your auric field. And when you were looking out, it would slap you and hit you with some sort of vibration that would punch you into the next overtone or whatever the frequency was. It's incredible. I love that this reality is made up this way. It's just, I don't know. It just really, it's so cool, man. In respect to paranormal investigation here, there are so many people interested out of sheer curiosity in the subject, especially in the earlier days, like the 90s, where we just started seeing some of the television shows come up and, these methods that they were employing. Should we be focusing on the external analysis of using equipment, or do you find intuition, once cultivated, to be a more accurate way to interact with paranormal activity? And how do we stay safe doing it?
Okay. So I think that a lot of the equipment that we have now, we don't have much equipment, really. Most of the things that they sell, with these different ghost supply stores or what have you, these are typical home inspection tools. Okay. You go and you get something on that tool. Okay. You've detected a fault in that home. Okay. Your EMF meter's going off. You're picking up electromagnetic frequency, not from a ghost, because there's a fault somewhere in the house. Oh, there's moisture. Well, check the wall. Okay, crack it open. You're probably got a mold monster living in there and a window leak or something like that. But there's a lot to be explained with all that. So I throw all that out the window. That, to me, in my humble opinion, is trash. So it isn't until you start getting into like these, the ghost box or the Frank's box, if you will, there's a few other random tools that work with random data that I find are a little bit more plausible. There's a project called the Global Consciousness Project based out of Princeton University in New Jersey. And they work with all of this random data. And they find that the random numbers or the random data that comes up correlates with what's happening on the planet. It almost is predictive, right? So is there a possibility that using random data types of tools can be able to pick up on anomalies? Right there, yes. 110%, yes. We are on point with that. And, a lot of study of quantum theory, if you will, does go into these like hyper minuscule types of changes, if you will. I mean, I guess you're like in the Boston area, right? So, MIT, they're working on all this stuff, right? So the thing is that, you're looking at stuff and we're looking at the bigger thing, but the things that we should be looking at are the smaller things. They're looking for apparition. No, you're looking for the wrong thing. You're looking for something that's so small that's going to cause the smallest difference. Can intuition pick up on that? Oh yeah. When you go and you get the hairs raising on the back of your neck. Oh yeah. Yeah. Right there. But I think we need better equipment. I think that we're looking for something that's too big, because spirit exists and it's smaller than the head of a pin.
Very interesting take. Microcosmic versus macrocosmic, and they're both relative and could not exist one without the other. That's a really interesting thought. Go smaller on that point. My God, I like that a lot, actually. What about attachments and so forth? I mean, all right, so my experience about going into a lot of detail here, I actually stopped doing the paranormal investigation as a physical thing that I would undertake, because on two separate investigations, I would have this particular energy follow me home. It was different on both spots, but it had the same effect. It was incredibly negative. You're talking about the, sleep paralysis. You're talking about the disassociation with people around you. You're talking about feeling like somebody's holding a knife to your throat, cut you anytime. This feeling of dread. It's there, and that doesn't even extend into the physical anomalies that you were seeing in the air in way of orbs or things trying to manifest in front of you. But all around, it was a negative experience. And it happened to be just because I went to these two places and asked questions. What are your thoughts on some of the negative attachments that may put people off from, going into some of these places? Is that a healthy caution, or is that something to be overcome in a certain way through knowledge and understanding?
Well, protection. Let's go down the rabbit hole on that one, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So attachments, interestingly enough, I have a different understanding because I've actually performed exorcisms. Now, the thing that I've understood in every single exorcism or demonic encounter, if you will, or an attachment encounter, whatever, they all live within a very common environment. and that is going to be said to be trauma. Individuals who carry trauma. And these are very heavy, emotionally weighted, if you will. I guess you want to call them like entities, if you will, because they're events, but they turn into actual things in a person's mind or in their memory, because it brings them down. It almost suppresses them from being able to go out and experience world. It will add fear to their experience. Now, do I think that these are conscious, like they're grabbing the throat, or no? Because again, how do you take they're saying it's something big. No, we're big. Again, going back to the whole theory of macro, or micro, if you will. Again, super, super small. Okay, the size of a pinprick. How is it going to have that deep of an impact unless it's triggering something?
So in a sense, maybe our energy lending in the awareness that we think that something's there is actually growing that into the physical, giving it that energy to become something interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. I think Tibetan thought form also adds to that a little bit. I think that there's also some attribute. But again, a lot of our trauma, especially between ages 2 and 9, I've interviewed like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And every single person who has ever claimed to have some kind of attachment or negative experience, I have a conversation with them. Now, don't get me wrong. No child gets out unscathed. But you know what? The very special shade or color of trauma that these individuals have is not like your typical everyday average person. It's not. They've gone through hell and back, and especially between ages 2 and 9, and these things have not been resolved psychologically or spiritually, and they lack the tools, the coping tools. Sometimes there's drugs, or there's alcohol, or other types of pharmaceutical use, other things that are being used, maybe even naturally, like marijuana, or other substances that are being used to be able to kind of cushion the consciousness, if you will, and separate it from the subconsciousness, but that doesn't heal the problem. And this is part of what I do in my practice, is I help to be able to bring forward that healing and be able to work with people. And by all means, I'm not a counselor, but I am a spiritual mentor, and I help people to be able to bring forward that trauma, if you will, and we break it on down, baby. We go through it, and and this is what we do in my exorcisms that I perform. This is how I address it. I go through a very gentle stage of this. And not only are we healing the, what's perceived as like a demonic or an attachment, if you will, we're healing the consciousness that's drawing that negativity to turn it into some kind of an animal. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, it does actually. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Oh man, I like the way that you think. It's a fresh perspective. I mean, I hear a lot of people talk, not even necessarily on this show, but they talk and they're kind of saying the same thing through different words and perhaps a different lens, but your take is very fresh, and I really appreciate that. Before we go forward, Neats B, thank you very much for the $10 super sticker. I appreciate you, brother. And of course, I see a lot of you guys from Goof On in here tonight, and it's always nice to see you join in here on Dark Hour Paranormal. We're all very close, as you guys know, in respect to the networks. So thank you very much for that generous donation. As I mentioned, not necessarily tonight, but we've been talking about it. I'm going out to LA with the Cousins brothers from Third Phase of Moon. We're shooting the second documentary follow-up to Countdown to Disclosure through the road trip. So this is helping, guys. I appreciate all of your help on that end. So let's see. I've got a couple more questions for you. And I think that this one that I'm going to ask you is something that people don't contemplate at large, especially when you're getting into the paranormal field. They think, okay, this place has some sort of purported history and it doesn't matter what it was. We're going to go and explore it. Are there, in your opinion, any sites that should be unpermitted in respect to investigation? I've often felt that places of extreme mass tragedy, let's say, such as a concentration camp, should be respectfully left alone. Could the same be said about certain ancient sites where a previous culture may have called in ancient, elemental, or non-human entities that still linger in respect to protecting the site?
I would say proceed with caution, because again, just as we have private property here in the United States, and yeah, grandpa's going to come out with his rifle,
Yeah.
people are protective. People are protective over theirs, and the same thing with like ancient burial grounds or anything like that. And some things are just considered sacred, just as some people consider their home to be sacred. You're going to go trepsing into somebody's home nowadays, you're going to end up with a Glock in your face. So the thing is that people will sometimes create impressions, if you will, that this is ours, and there's a possessiveness. And what happens is I want to be able to say the belief system that these people have creates I don't know if you want to call it a barrier or a curse or whatever you want it, whatever language you want to call it, right? But their belief system is what creates the impression there. So that's the protection for the area. And I would say that if anybody is going to be able to go into a sacred place, okay, you better go in there with a stronger belief system than the people who originally settled that place, because you're going up against belief systems. The one with the bigger belief system is the winner. You get all the candy. But I'd still say, it takes us back to even, back in the 1980s. What was that? Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was just thinking about that last night. And Indiana Jones went in there with a belief system that was so strong in his conviction. Everybody cheered him on. He was the hero. But still, he went up against some pretty nasty things across 3 movies, but it still gives you a good example of how these ancient or these people, if you will, have gone ahead and created like a protection, if you will, or ritual that they've created something to protect what's theirs, their private property.
That makes perfect sense to me. I'm in complete agreement in many of those respects. I think, we could sit and even talk about that a little bit further in respect to what you're proposing here. I mean, I'm going to say it like this. If the stipulation is that you want to walk into one of these places and you have to be sure that, your belief system is stronger than the ancient culture that was there creating the reason that you're actually there, for fuck's sake, mate, you better walk the other direction. I think you're going to go down to TGI Friday and have a better night for yourself. That's a good way to put it. It's a caution. You got to proceed with caution and, really know what you're looking for. You guys who saw me go out to America's Stonehenge some time ago, I had somebody else approach me and say, hey, I want to shoot this site. But, we're going to get a couple guys. We're going to go up there and we're going to go lay on the sacrificial table and we're going to do it. I said, no, we're not. We're not going to do that at all. That is not the place to do that. And sure enough, a good year later, I actually had the opportunity to go up there and film a documentary, and I did experience some things, but it was more of a recognition. Like I saw it saw me, we were aware, and we kind of kept our distance as long as I didn't go where I wasn't supposed to, when I wasn't supposed to. So yeah, it's very interesting to, conceptualize and really get into. Now, if I were somebody who had no real spiritual background and I was interested and curious in getting into paranormal investigation, and I came to you for a bit of advice, what bit of knowledge that you could give behind this sort of endeavor, and what would you say to me going forward with my curiosity at the helm?
Okay. One of the first things is to be able to look at your core foundation of your belief systems and what you were raised in, okay, or raised with, if you will. So make sure that even if you have a belief system that steers away from your core belief system. I know a lot of us were, raised, whether it's Muslim or Catholic or Christian or Protestant or whatever, but make sure that if you're a little unsure, first and foremost, do not go to YouTube, please. Don't go to YouTube to be able to learn about, all these different religions and all these different faiths or whatever. Like go show up at a mosque, go show up at a church, go sit down with a human being. Human interaction is invaluable, and strengthen up your belief systems and really stick to something. Don't be like, oh, yeah, I'm a Catholic, but yeah, we read my chakras. No, don't get away from that. Just don't do
Interesting.
that. That's bad. That's shame. Don't do that.
Interesting.
So, don't. That's bad. That's really, really bad, because now you're taking Hindu, and Hindu has become such an influential religion in the so to speak New Age, or they call it spiritual, but it's Hindu. A lot of people it's all been contaminated and polluted, and all of these different belief systems, and people hodgepodge their belief systems together. And it's like a giant quilt of a mix and match. But then when you get into trouble in life, you got no tools. You can't pull from this. Anita Manjori wrote an incredible book about this. It was called Dying to Be Me. And, religion, or her faith, if you will, saved her life. And she went and she dabbled with this, she dabbled with that, she did this, she did. It wasn't until she rewrote the entire, writings on the chalkboard, if you will, that she was able to recover and come back from final stage cancer. But your belief systems are going to be what, keeps you safe. And you need some kind of foundation, some kind of education. And a lot of what's on the internet about paranormal and how to perform a paranormal investigation, I'm going to tell you to be able to go out there and learn science, real science. Don't go out there and go, well, this is an orb. Please, don't do that.
Especially with the orbs.
I'm going to turn into like Albert Einstein in a minute with my hair. So there's, that's the great argument about it. But, not every orb is going to be a spirit, okay, is what I'm trying to be able to tell you. You need to be able to use deductive scientific reasoning and be able to reproduce your results scientifically either way. And there are plenty of things that we encounter that are just random chance. So I'm going to tell you, first and foremost, strengthen up your belief systems. Choose one. Neo in the Matrix, he chose one. He was the one.
Interesting. Oh, okay. That's so interesting.
But it's important. You got to go back. People back in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, before all this New Age nonsense started to really push. And the Eastern world religion started to push. We weren't as contaminated. I remember going to school. We had Catholics, Christians, and many different types of Christians, Jews, but yeah, and that's it. So, the point here is that, again, science is also a belief system, okay? And you need to be able to make sure that you have your belief systems put together because you want to speak intelligently. I see a lot of garbage out on the internet, and I'm not going to name names quite obviously because that would be in poor taste. But there's a lot of people out there going, hey, you got this image of a person, look at the spirit, or whatever. That's not a spirit. Mm-hmm. That's not, you can swear up and down that it's a spirit, it's a ghost, it's this, it's that. Our brains are conditioned. I don't remember what it's called. There's a scientific term for it where people look for faces and things. Do you know what I'm speaking of? I think
pareidolia.
Yep, pareidolia. You got it. There you go. Yeah, the word was on the tip of my tongue. So there's all this like psychological stuff that contaminates our perception and also our deductive reasoning. So make sure that you have an education. There's too many paranormal investigators and not enough scientists out there. And that's what I have to be able to say. I spent many decades, if you will, being able to attend educational, institutions and being able to learn a lot of the stuff that I do. I've worked with some of the world's top scientists in the world. I've sat down over wine and cheese, being able to talk about shop, science or whatever. Wow. And not to say that I'm a scientist per se, I'm a jack of many trades, but I can hold my own, instead of talking about, whether or not, the Red Sox, or the Patriots, they used to tell me, oh yeah, when we're up in Boston at the Copley and we're talking to the scientists, just talk about, sports. And I'm like, no, I want to talk science. These are not scientists. I worked for Nature magazine for like forever. So, of course I'm going to want to pick people's brains. But the thing here is, again, you got to know your trade. And if you want to be able to put paranormal investigator, you want to be able to, and again, I'm a part of a very large network. I've been the Mother Hubbard of this network, and I invite all kinds of people in. And, if you believe that this is what it is, I'm not going to doubt you on your beliefs. There's many different beliefs. There's political beliefs. There's, all kinds of different types of beliefs out there. But if you believe that this is, this thing of mist, or fog or whatever is a spirit, then God bless you. That's your belief system. I'm not going to chastise you upon that. But I think that it's important that we go into it with, eyes wide open and our intellect there and our intelligence and being able to identify what it is that we're witnessing, even as a group, and being able to say, this is not, wait, let's figure this out. Let's try to debunk it first and see what this is, because there's got to be an answer. It could be an atmospheric thing, but you need to be able to have somebody who knows enough about atmosphere to be able to say, like this, you need to bring in the right kinds of experts.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that very quickly. Mr. Catfish, 2100, thank you for the $10 super chat. You are one of the most staunch supporters of Dark Hour Paranormal in many ways, man, and I very much appreciate you. Thank you so much, brother. Might be a sprite these days, but I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much, man. You mentioned, I mean, belief needing to be a very strong thing, you know, entering into location the way that you did. Is this why, you know, so many cases of demonic possession or even poltergeist activity, they call in a priest from, you know, we're all very aware of, you know, the Christian or Catholic methods of dealing with these sort of things. In certain cases, it does actually work. In other cases, it doesn't. Is what you're talking about possibly a reason for that discrepancy between the results?
Power of suggestion. You know, you hold up a cross, the power of Christ compels you. You know, what are you going to do? So I think that power of suggestion plays a very big role in that, especially if we go and we put priests on a pedestal or any clergy person, if you will, to be able to give them more respect over your typical everyday person. You know, and we're it's not that we are like super, but you know, we are educated. And many priests, if you will, are also very well trained in being able to, well, priests, I think nowadays are not even supposed to do exorcisms. I think some still do on the side, but I think the Vatican said no bueno. So what I think is going on is that they're coming in, they're counseling with the individuals to be able to talk to them about their experience, and they're going to be able to do a blessing. But I think it's the power of belief and the power of suggestion that whatever it is that's been ailing the environment or the person is going to be lifted because they've given so much belief that it's true.
Yeah, okay. So you're giving that much energy. Again, you know, even people have talked about walking into a location on this level, and maybe it's your energy that you're unconscious of, some bigger part of you. I mean, for what we know, the arc field itself is, I think, 55 feet in diameter. I mean, that's a very large space to encompass and not be aware of it. So, I mean, maybe some of what we're experiencing walking into these places is actually generated by our thought forms on a subconscious level. It's absolutely possible. IR Film, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. He says, hey, bud, just got here. Damn. Cheers, brother. Hey, I appreciate you, mate. Thank you coming in. And, you know, you're also one of the ones that have been around for a little while. Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate it. And if you just got here, go back, rewind. You missed quite a bit, and it's all there in the archives, guys. You can go and check it out for those of you who are interested after the fact. Now, that being said here, I think we're going to wrap up for the evening. We're getting short on time, but listen, this is one of these conversations I feel like I could sit and talk to you for hours about, and it would just pretty much, we'd make a whole world map out of it in the directions that we'd go. And I would love the opportunity to do that with you in the future if you're open to it. But you know, for tonight, thank you so much for coming on and lending this really interesting and fresh perspective on some of these, you know, concepts that have been around for a very long time. And, you know, I think that the more angles that we approach these things and the people who are bold enough to encompass a different perception of reality and then express it, it really rounds things out for all of us, especially in our own personal contemplation and ruminations about, you know, these topics at hand. So once again, thank you so much. And if you could, please just let everybody know where they can find you and promote yourself right now, because I want to hear all of it, please.
Okay. Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure being on your show. And of course, I would love to come back. You folks can be able to all find us out on North American Psychic and Paranormal Network, NAPPN. It's North American Psychic Paranormal Network, the letters, .net. Okay, because we're a network. Okay, so you can be able to go out onto the chat section, and we've got 24-hour chats. However, on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, we have a Spiritual Seekers program that is on Nappin TV Live, where we all come into live and we have open mic. So everybody's welcome to that at 2:00 in the afternoon Eastern. And then again at 8:00, we have open mic again. And that's for paranormal investigations. You're out and about, you want second set eyes, you know, you want a group of psychics to work with you, and you're wandering through the cemetery, or you're, you know, we're all lurking in there. We're all there for you. And we're there to be able to offer you support. Thank you. My personal website is Chickie Haute, Chickie Haute, Haute, just like the spelling of my name.com. And I am a life, love, and well-being coach, as mentioned earlier, and also a spiritual mentor and a master psychic energy reader. I don't do Reiki. Again, Eastern world stuff. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about that a little bit more next time we sit down. Being a certified Reiki master myself, which I'm going to tell you, I actually didn't want to have that modality under my belt. I only did it because at the time people wanted a piece of paper whenever you approach them professionally to say, hey, this is what I do. They wanted those certificates to say, hey, this is what he's doing. So I'd love to talk to you about that. All right. Well, thank you very much, Chickie. If you don't mind, and you have the moment, if you hang out backstage, I'd like to say my proper goodbyes off camera. If you have to go, I completely understand, and we can talk later. But for the moment, I'm going to take you off. And once again, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Oh, my God. That was awesome. I mean, I say that a lot, but, some things really do stick with me. And this is going to be one of those shows that I go back and I watch again with some very meticulous focus on, some of the things that are being said here. And of course, the things that are in between the lines, because I think a lot of times when we talk on these levels, but there's a lot more in terms of intention and implication that goes into the layering and the structure of how we're saying certain things that we're not even aware of when we're talking about this. And this perception that I'm offering here goes to whoever is doing this at large, not just here on Dark Hour Paranormal or the network of shows that we do. That being said, keep your eyes up. We have in a half an hour, Goofon will be on 10 o'clock Eastern time. Yes, he is on the Eastern Seaboard with me this year. It was nice to see him move down there to Florida, but he is, weathering the night hours as I have been doing. And I know he's feeling it in certain regards, but he's pretty well adjusted. Either way, his show is absolutely fantastic. For you, those of you who are not familiar, please go and check him out. And of course, Third Phase of Moon will have something later on tonight, as they always do. And if you guys caught the interview with Daniel Sheehan, Lou Elizondo's lawyer, as well as Dr. Greer's lawyer, that was quite the fascinating sit down for about 45 minutes that you watched the video. I implore you to go and check that out on your free time if you're at all keeping track of what's happening in ufology at large, especially in regards to the mainstream media. Well, folks, I want to thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you to my moderators who always do a fantastic job keeping this a very healthy and safe place to be. And I want to thank to all my super chatters tonight. Thank you so much for your support. We often talk about the financial end, being something that we don't really want to speak on. But the truth of the matter is, this is how some of these shows survive, and nobody's out here panhandling. And it's all the graciousness and the gratuity that you guys give to us that is really noted here. So I never take one penny that you guys donate for granted. And I promise you, I got receipts. Every single one of those dollars goes back into the show, whether I'm paying for the StreamYard platform, whether I'm buying equipment, whether I'm putting it towards travel. It's awesome. Thank you so much for you guys being here tonight. And tomorrow we will be back with Laura Lee Potvin. Once again, we welcome her back. It's been a little while, and we're going to be talking about sacred geometry at large and how that may be an actual integer in respect to what it is as a whole and reality and how it's constructed. And we're going to go into a few more topics along those esoteric notes. So please join us again tomorrow night. It will be at 8:30 Eastern time and 5:30 Pacific. We'll be here. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the show. It does help us out, and share if you have the moment and like to spread the word of what we're talking about, which of course is an open forum to discuss. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here with us once again tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you. Sorry if I can't shout you out every time. We get right into this, and the guest is of, the most important focus when I'm getting into this. But I see each one of you here, and I appreciate every single one of you from the bottom of my heart. So with that being said, guys, have a fantastic night. And we're going to go ahead and get this queued up. What do I say? What do I say? Stay inquisitive, stay curious, and stay the fuck out of a location unless your belief system is stronger than the one you're going into. Yeah, that works. That was better. Thanks, guys, for being here tonight. We'll see you next time on Dark Hour Paranormal.